Hi there. This is Zachary Steele and Tyler Hobart, and we're gonna just run through a quick breakdown of players we think you should buy low or sell high on ahead of Week 4. Um, so I'll get started here. One guy I think you should really buy low on. He's made this list a couple times now. Is Michael Thomas. You're gonna have a lot of owners sitting at 1 and 2 or 0 and 3 because they drafted him and they've gotten nothing out of him, and anybody that's in that position knows they kind of have to start winning now. And if they're worried that Michael Thomas either is going to be slow to get going when he comes back or maybe misses another game, you might be able to get him at a discount. I personally got him at a hell of a discount in our league, but that was more of a indication of poor management on the other
Ugh,
guys.
it's just like I don't even know why you brought it up. Like it's just bad.
But my point being is if you're a team that's 2-1 or 3-0, you can afford to lose a couple games. And Michael Thomas is going to come back and he's going to be a top 5 fantasy asset down the stretch. And it's very,
Do you
very
think
rare
he's
that
back this week?
I think he'll play this week.
Hmm.
The Saints need him. They're 0-2 without him. Breeze looked bad because he
He
doesn't have
does.
anybody to throw slants to.
Poor
But
Sanders.
yeah, he's old.
Hmm.
Another guy that made the list here is Josh Jacobs. He had a really great week 1, but I mean, that was against the Panthers too, who are getting eaten alive by everybody. But he's really been quiet lately, and um, a lot of owners are probably disappointed to see. I believe he had less than 10 PPR points this last week, but he went into the week a little banged up, and he played a really good Patriots defense. So I think it's really reasonable to expect him to turn that around. I think he's 12th on the season in targets, which among running backs, which is a huge bump up from where he was last year. I know it's nothing to get ecstatic about, but it's a huge bump, and the Raiders pretty much run through Josh Jacobs and Darren Waller, so it's hard. You're going to get an RB1 out of him, and I think a lot of people view him as an RB2 right now. Um,
Yeah, I like him a lot.
I do too.
Outside of like, he's really one that will have to be one of their bigger pass catchers going forward.
Yeah. Another guy that made this list, I've been super high on for a long time, is Devontae Parker. He's been playing through a hamstring injury. He hasn't missed a game yet, but he's clearly not been himself. If you watched the game last Thursday, he looked slow out there, but he still put up a respectable outing, and now he's had 10 days to heal, and he gets to play the Seahawks defense, who are giving up yards to receivers at a historic pace. So,
1,203 games. It's
yeah,
crazy.
like if if you're if you
1,200
have
passing
Dolphins
yards.
pass catchers play this week,
Yeah.
or anybody that plays the Seahawks, play them.
I, w- I
Um,
will be playing Preston.
I will be playing Parker. Um, so basically, my point is the window to buy him is going to slam shut after he has like 200 goddamn receiving yards against the Seahawks this week. So you got to get him now.
Possible.
It really is. Um, Another guy I've got two Texans on this list. They've had an absolutely brutal schedule to start the season. Playing the Chiefs, Steelers, and Ravens, and they haven't looked particularly good at all. But David Johnson, I believe, was on the field for like 95% of the snaps over the last 2 weeks. He's getting a lot of volume. He's going to be involved in the passing game. And I think he's a pretty solid RB2 the rest of the way. And he's largely disappointed outside of week 1. So I think now is the cheapest he's going to be. They've got a really soft schedule coming up. And I expect that whole Texas offense to get right over the next couple weeks. Um,
Yeah, I hope Watson gets better.
yeah, Tyler
But
overpaid for him on auction day because he and I went back and forth, and I'm currently okay with
I
how that went down.
I'm still high on him. He's
I
got
am too. I am too.
he's got a lot of games left.
He does. Another guy that made this list here, he's made it previously, but Kenny Galladay. He has first week back last week, and he still didn't look like he was 100%, but he got a
That
touchdown,
grab
and
though.
he's an animal, and he's only going to get healthier, and he plays the Saints in what should be a high scoring game this week, and once he puts up 2 back-to-back games, you're not people that drafted him are going to remember who they drafted. So the window to buy him is pretty much now, or
The Lions are very bad.
they're bad. Um, Another guy I keep putting on this list is Jonathan Taylor. he is the lead back in Indianapolis, and it's not close.
Mhm.
And they have a great offensive line, and he's super talented. And somehow he just hasn't had that monster Taylor went nuclear game yet. They beat the Jets so bad that he didn't play in the second half. So in what you'd think would be such a positive game script was too positive. So um, a big game
Yeah,
is
I like Taylor
coming.
a lot.
A big game's coming sooner or later, and the fact that it hasn't happened yet really surprises me. So you can still actually probably get him pretty cheap, but I think he might be a top 10 running back the rest of the way.
He would have went like Mixon prices if
Like
this
the
was like
well,
we're
like
drafting today.
the second Mac went down, his value just shot way the hell up.
Yeah,
So
and he looks great.
he does. Speaking of Mixon, I
Right
can't
there.
even necessarily attest to him being super talented or anybody on that Bengals offense being great, but he's better than what he's been doing. I'll be shocked if he finishes outside of the top 15 at the position, and a lot of people that drafted him are probably just done. Um, like throw throw a flex play at him and just see if they take it. Give Mixon owners something that if they accept it, you'll be totally fine with it, and you won't. Like a lot of Mixon owners are just pissed off, and it's understandable because Bernard's getting a lot of receptions out of the backfield, which is weird. I don't know why you pay Mixon 50 million over 4 years just to
Hmm.
not use him. But if you look at last year, he was awful to start the season. I think the first 8 weeks of the season, he was like running back 32, and then for the last
He
eight,
was good.
and then he was like RB5 the second half of the season. So he's the kind of guy that's shown he can put up big games in bunches. So it's gonna come. He's not as bad as he's been. So get him now. Um,
Same with DJ for sure. Like
Same with I don't get. He had I want to say 4 targets this last week in a game the Panthers surprisingly won against the Chargers. He salvaged his performance by having 2 catches for 65, which isn't awful, but if you drafted DJ Moore, you were expecting more, and he's more expecting more. But he hasn't had a great game yet. He had one game where he broke 100 yards, but he didn't grab a touchdown. Robbie Anderson's looked good, but I think it's really clear DJ Moore is he's
he's the
the
number
main.
one.
He's their number one. And as long as McCaffrey's out, or even the rest of the season, they're a bad team. They're going to be playing from behind and passing a lot. So DJ Moore's going to have better days ahead. And then one more guy here, Kenyon Drake. I wasn't super high on him heading into the season, but he's fifth in the NFL in rushing attempts. His receiving usage is concerning, but I he's shown that he can be involved in the passing game and succeed. So I think that will turn around. Um,
And I just like their offense. Like
yeah,
if you can get him cheap, he's in a good offense that
yeah, like he's
is
gonna
going to produce.
he's in that RB 10 to 15 category for me, and he's been largely underwhelming. So if you can get him at a bargain, do it because he's better than he's been.
Hmm.
All right. So now we'll go over a lot of players you should sell high on. Number one here, I've been saying for several weeks is just sell Nick Chubb. Um, it's back-to-back weeks of 2 touchdowns. That's not sustainable, and he's been able to do it because they're playing bad teams, so they've got positive game scripts. But as we saw in
Did
week
you see
one,
the stat
what's
with
that?
the Browns? It was like this is like the first game in X years, like a long time that
Oh,
they've
they've been
scored
above
like back to back
500.
30. No, back to back 30-point
Oh wow.
games. So this is the best their offense has like ever
Yeah.
done. So get rid of
And
that man.
yeah, and the fact of the matter is they're not a good team, at least in my personal opinion, and I think the average person will agree that nobody's going to believe
Hmm.
they're a good team until they show it. Um, and we saw week one against the Ravens. Nick Chubb can really get scripted out of a game if they fall behind. So, like for example, this week they play the Cowboys. That game's going to be a shootout, back and forth, passing affair. I'd I'd rather play Kareem Hunt this week, and Nick Chubb is valued significantly higher. So like if you can trade Nick Chubb for RB1 value, do it because that's not what he is. Him and Hunt to me are about the same, RB 15 to 20.
Yeah.
Um, Another guy here is James Conner. He was awful week one and somehow had two straight 100-yard rushing games after that. Um, but I can't say that I expect him to be healthy the rest of the season because we all know he's got an injury history, and B, Benny Snell has looked good in the opportunities he's
Yeah.
gotten. So like I just don't. If you can trade James Conner for like fringe RB1 2 value, do it because there's a very real chance he just loses his job either due to injury or being outperformed, and that's not something you want in one of your better players. So
Later in the year.
yeah. Another guy is Mike Evans. I believe he has 4 touchdowns this season, and he's got
Yeah.
week one. His stat line was 1 reception for 2 yards and a touchdown, and this last week it was 2 receptions for 2 yards and 2 touchdowns. Um,
Just awful.
and I know a lot of people would say that with Godwin out for the next couple of weeks, it's looking like with a hamstring injury, you'd think Mike Evans will be the number one, and he might be, but he's not gonna score over 20 touchdowns on the season, which is what he's on pace to do. And Brady doesn't like throwing the ball deep, and that's the kind of receiver Evans is. So Evans to me is just a really boomer bust touchdown dependent option that I don't really want any part of.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
I agree.
Another guy here is Michael Gallup. He finally had a good week this season, but as we've touched on earlier, it was
Courtesy of
against the
the Hawks.
Seahawks,
Mm.
um, and everybody in that offense hate like Cedric Wilson had two 40-yard touchdowns,
He's
and
never had a touchdown.
granted he was still the second best Wilson in the game, but
Let
um,
Russ cook.
but point being is he's great, but there's just so many pass catchers in the Dallas offense, and
Hmm.
outside of Amari Cooper, who as much as I didn't necessarily love going into the season, nobody's getting consistent targets week to week, so I just have a hard time trusting a Cowboy outside of Cooper and Elliott and Dak. Um,
Yeah,
Todd Gurley's here because you're not really selling high on him, but you're just getting out of a
the
bad
name.
situation. He's got name value, but he looks awful out on the field. I don't know if he had any missed or forced missed tackles this week, but in weeks 1 and 2,
Yeah,
he had 37 touches and hadn't forced a missed tackle,
0. Hmm.
which is just atrocious. And Brian Hill is getting just as much of a workload. Um, Basically, Todd Gurley's value is in the name, and if you can trade him for a startable player week to week, do it because Todd Gurley's not startable week to week. He's touchdown dependent. And he's not catching the ball.
Hmm.
Another guy to sell high on is Mike Davis. I think he's like fourth in the NFL among running backs in receptions this season, and he's only really played one.
Wow.
So like that's nuts, and he's going to be a top 15 to 20 running back until McCaffrey comes back. But if you own him, you know he's a rental. Um, so say the McCaffrey owner in your league didn't get him, trade Mike Davis to that McCaffrey owner for something. If you can get yourself a solid startable player for the rest of the season for a guy you can only use for a couple of weeks, I would do it. Um, Another guy here is Keenan Allen. I actually love Keenan Allen, the player, but I think I feel like he had 19 targets or something ridiculous this last week, and he had 13
Really?
catches. Yeah, and that's not how the Chargers want to run their offense. Anthony Lynn loves a run-heavy offense, and they've got a young quarterback in Herbert. And if Taylor ever comes back, they're going to be even more run-heavy. So I don't see them being forced into many situations where they have to throw the ball around that much. I like Keenan Allen as a wide receiver 3 or
Mm.
flex every week, but he's not going to have those 13 reception, 130-yard touchdown games like he did this last week very often.
That's fair.
So if you can trade him for a wide receiver 2, I would do it. Like if you can trade him for Adam Thielen, who I know I didn't make this list, but he was bad. If you can trade him for Adam Thielen, do it. And I think a lot of Adam Thielen owners out there might do that. Um, Another guy, he's made this list twice in a row, is Tyler Boyd.
Interesting.
Um, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I was wrong about it last week because it's back-to-back weeks of performing well. But to me, it just seems like they're really moving towards getting younger guys involved. Auden Tate finally he wasn't a healthy scratch this week, and he had
Higgins.
he had 3 targets in the end zone, and Higgins played the most snaps out of every Bengals receiver this last week, and it looked good. So if you're the Bengals, you know you're bad, so you're going to use your young players and see what you have there. I know they've got Boyd under contract for a few more years and all that, but I see this kind of just being a lost season for the Bengals. They're really just trying to cycle guys in and out, and I have a hard time trusting anybody that's not named Joe Mixon in that offense, and I don't even
I
really
don't know if I
trust Joe
like that
Mixon.
argument.
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
just
like I think he's a wide receiver 3 flex play. I'd rather have Keenan Allen than him, but um,
that hurts.
he's just it's just hard to know with a rookie quarterback, especially in that offense. There's so many pass catchers. I don't think I can count on one distancing himself.
We'll see.
We'll see. Yeah. Another guy here is James Robinson, who I hate to put on here because I love him. I have him in our home league, but he got to beat
Them
up on the
touchdowns.
Dolphins. Yeah, a touchdown regression. I think he has 3 touchdowns over the last 2 weeks. I think he's a great player, and if you got him on waivers, you got yourself a steal. But he's not a top 10 running back. I think he's RB5 or 6 right now, which is just nuts.
That hurts. That hurts.
He's not that good. So, like, I think he's He's an RB2, and but if you can trade him for RB1 value, now I don't think I would do James Robinson for Joe Mixon. What do you think?
No, I wouldn't.
Yeah, I
Just
don't think
because
so.
I like Robinson's upside, and if you
Yeah,
got him for free, it's like I'm
it
gonna
is
keep
fun.
riding this.
You
Yeah,
feel very good about yourself if you have him right now. So it's tough, but I think it's important to remember that Armstead and Ozigbo are on IR right now. And I mean, I know Robinson has performed well enough to deserve being the number 1 there for even when those guys come back, but
but it is
it
Jacksonville.
it's just a little murky, and I can't say they're a very well run organization. So I like to avoid players on teams I don't trust the management for.
Yeah, if you can flip him for a ton and you got him for free, it's you should be so proud.
Like, if you want to go offer him to the McCaffrey owner for McCaffrey, and you're sitting at 2-1 or 3-0, do it because
Interesting.
they might do that.
Really?
I don't know.
I'll have to think about that.
The last guy here, Justin Jefferson, he was a really hyped rookie um, coming out of college, and a lot of people felt like he'd step in and just take this Stephon Diggs role, and they moved him out of the slot this week, and he did that. I want to say it was 7 receptions for 175 yards and a touchdown, which is just insane.
And
But
33% of those targets.
yeah, so I mean, he looked the part, but
Mm-hmm.
it's clearly still Adam Thielen's the number 1 there, and they're a run-heavy offense with a bad quarterback. So if you can
It's
trade
an
him,
easy sell high, but
yeah, I
he's
mean,
free, maybe.
yeah, I mean, like if you go pick him up on waivers, because I like the upside, but if you're in a deeper league and you can trade him for a player that you can trust that you can start every week, I would do it because
Mm-hmm.
we may have seen Jefferson's peak this last week.
I hope
We
so.
probably did, yeah.
Yeah.
um, anyone else you wanted to touch on, or
No, I think we covered a lot of them.
cool? Well, um, if any of you guys had players we didn't mention, or um, you've had any trade propositions that are floating around in your league, feel free to drop them in the comments. If you like the video, please sure to like and subscribe. And if you
Give a
want more
thumbs up.
content, yep, and follow my Twitter. I'll link it in the description. Thanks.